Welcome again, boys and girls. I'm so happy to have you with me. We are going to be reading today about the nervous system again. The nervous system is so important to all the functions of our body that it's really important to spend a little additional time talking about it. So we want to make sure that we review what we've already learned. Remember that we have learned that all of our various human body systems are interconnected. That means they all rely on each other to do their particular job. They're like a complex machine, many different parts working together. Remember that the nervous system is interconnected with other body systems. Remember, the skeletal system and the muscular system have to work together as well, but all of these systems in your body are directed by your nervous system. That's why we'll be spending a little bit more time on them. We learned yesterday, or at least in the last lesson, lesson 5, about conscious and unconscious actions that you might make your body do. Okay? Conscious means that you think about it and your body will respond in an appropriate way to do that. When you, like writing, for instance, picking up the pencil, sitting up straight in your chair, having your paper tilted just the right direction, and physically writing along the paper are all conscious decisions that you direct your body to do. So basically, you are telling your own brain to do those things, and your brain directs your muscles to do those. You can practice and get better at conscious activities. Unconscious activities and reflex actions are things that we really do not think about, but our bodies still do. Your circulatory system is really an unconscious part of our body system. It's not something we think about. We don't have to think about our heart beating. We don't have to think about breathing. We don't have to think about digestion. Those things happen unconsciously. They are involuntary, okay? Voluntary or conscious actions are things that we think about and direct our bodies to do. Involuntary, unconscious, and even reflex, those super fast things that don't even go to our brain, they just go to our spinal cord. Those reactions are things that just happen and we don't have any control over. Sorry about that. Let me turn this off. Remember, cells are the building blocks of life, all life, plant life, animal life, and those other kingdoms that you will hear about. Different types of cells make up different types of tissues. Different types of tissues make up different types of organs, and organs all work together in these interconnected systems to create a real body that functions well. Today, we're going to learn about different parts of the brain. So carefully listen to our story as our story is told by Ricardo. Remember? Do you remember what he is? We've talked about it every lesson, I think. Ricardo is our narrator. That's right. He's our narrator for the story. He takes us through and directs the direction of our story. When you write good stories, you may have a narrator, or it might be that all the characters tell the story. Here he is. Hi, I've got lots of fascinating facts to share with you today, so I'm hoping that my brain is in good working order. There's a lot to remember. Raise your hand if you have a brain. Whew. Glad all hands went up. Yes, of course you have a brain. All vertebrates have brains. Who remembers what else all vertebrates have? That's right, backbones. You know that you have a backbone. You've been testing out all those wonderfully flexible spines and support your bodies and protects your spinal cord. That's right. You have also learned that your nervous system is a complex network with 2 essential organs. your spinal cord, and your brain. That might be important to repeat. You've learned that your nervous system is a complex network with two essential organs, your spinal cord and your brain. Your spinal cord is connected to your brain by the brain stem. It's a central trunk of the brain. Central means in the middle, right? Your brain itself is very soft, but it's well protected by your cranium or your brain case. This strong eggshell-shaped part of your skull is formed from 8 interlocking bones wedged together like the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. Okay, this is the cranium, this top part, which really protects your brain. This other part is also part of your skull, but remember, those are mostly facial bones. Okay, so this is your cranium, your brain case. Inside your skull, your cranium, your brain floats in a clear liquid that cushions it and keeps it from banging against your skull. Your brain is covered in grooves and folds resembling a huge walnut. About the size of a cantaloupe or a grapefruit, this jelly-like pinkish-gray blob has blood vessels running all through its wrinkled mass. They carry oxygen, water, and other important nutrients to the brain. Your brain, when it is fully grown, weighs about 3 pounds. That may seem pretty small and light for such a big body, but humans have larger brains than animals when compared to their body size. So even though the brains of elephants and whales are actually larger than human brains, their brains are smaller than ours compared with the enormous size of their own bodies. Do you remember blood vessels that carry and circulate oxygen, water, and other important nutrients to the brain and throughout the body are part of the circulatory system? So the circulatory system and the nervous system are very interconnected. There are 3 main sections of the brain. They are the brainstem, the cerebrum, and the cerebellum. Each part of the brain has an important function. Your brainstem, about as thick as your thumb, put your thumb up. Is it gigantic? Pretty small. Is approximately 3 inches long. It helps to relay messages between your brain and your spinal cord. That makes sense because look at where it is. It's down here sort of at the bottom of your brain, right where the spinal cord would attach. So it's a relay message machine, your brainstem. The bottom third of your brainstem, the part that blends into the top of your spinal cord, is called the medulla or medulla. The medulla is responsible for many of your body's involuntary or automatic muscle movements. The medulla makes sure that your lungs are receiving oxygen by controlling your breathing and making sure that your heart is beating. The medulla helps you swallow and break down the food in your digestive system. The medulla controls cough and sneezes and hiccups, as well as sleeping and dreaming. It also controls the movement of your head and neck. That's this part that's right here down by the spinal cord. That sort of makes sense because you're going to learn up here, this part is more of the thinking part of your brain. And we don't need the thinking part of the brain. In fact, it would interfere with the automatic functions that our body need to do in order to keep us alive. Breathing, heartbeat, digestion, respiration, circulation. All those things have to happen automatically, sort of like reflex actions if we touch something hot that just go to the spinal cord. We don't want to have to think about those things. We want them just to happen. So it happens down here near where the automatic reflex actions happen in our bodies. The next part of our body is the cerebrum. It's the largest part of your brain. It fills the whole upper part of your skull. Language, memory, thought, sensations, those are things that you would feel. And decision making are housed in your cerebrum. Your cerebrum is the thinking brain. That's another word that people use to talk about your cerebrum. They call it the thinking brain. It's the part of the cerebrum that does most of the thinking, is the cerebral cortex. Your cortex is the deeply wrinkled outer surface of the cerebrum. The more that it is used, the thicker it becomes. Oh, have you ever heard me talk about you getting a fat brain? You get a fat brain by using your brain and trying new and different things. So if I tell you when you do this math problem, it's going to give you a fat brain, that's something that we all want. Okay, we want to have fat brains. And if I tell you you have a fat brain, that's a compliment because you've been working your brain really hard, learning new things, and your cerebral cortex is getting thicker and thicker and fatter and fatter. The more you use it, the thicker it becomes. In other words, people who use their brains to think a lot develop thicker cortexes. Your cortex is getting thicker every day. I love that. Let's talk a little bit more about this cerebral cortex. Let's look more closely at this cerebrum. The cerebrum is divided into two halves or hemispheres. You know that when we talk about the Earth, and there's an imaginary line around the middle of the Earth called the equator, the top part of the Earth, or the northern part, is the northern hemisphere, and the bottom part below the equator is the southern hemisphere. Sort of the same here with the brain, only here it's divided in half, the left side of the brain and the right side of the brain, and we call those hemispheres. The two hemispheres of the brain, the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere, are linked to one another by thick nerve fibers. Interestingly, the nerves that connect your cerebrum to the rest of your body cross over to the opposite side as they enter your brain. That's sort of weird. That means that each hemisphere largely controls the muscles on the opposite side of your body. The left side of your cerebrum controls the muscles on the right side of your body. The right side of your cerebrum controls the muscles on the left side of your body. That is really strange. One hemisphere is usually more developed than another in most people. If you use the right side of your body more, that is, you kick with your right foot, you hold your pencil with your right hand, then the left hemisphere of your brain is dominant or in control. It is the left hemisphere that is mostly associated with language, math, and reading. If, however, you use the left side of your body more, that is, you kick with your left foot, you hold your pencil in your left hand, then the right hemisphere of your brain is dominant. The right hemisphere is mostly associated with imagination, music, and shapes. So that's sort of interesting. It's not complete break, but it is very interesting. The left side of your body controls most language, reasoning, science, math, reading, and right-handed control. The left side of that's the left side. The right side of your brain controls the art, the creativity, the imagination, music, shapes, and your left hand control. This part of your brain connects this part over here of your body. This side of your brain or hemisphere controls the muscle movement of this side of your body. There's a crossover there. Not exactly sure why it's designed that way, but it is. There is a third part of the brain. I know you saw that up here when we talked about it, because we talked a little bit, sorry, overshot. We talked a little bit about the medulla, the cerebrum, which is also called the cerebral cortex, the thinking brain. But down here, there's another little part tucked in, sort of behind the brainstem and underneath the cerebrum. And let's talk a little bit about that. It's called the cerebellum. The third part of the brain, in addition to the brainstem and the cerebrum, is called the cerebellum, meaning little brain. Tucked underneath your cerebrum, in the back of your brain, your cerebellum resembles your cerebrum because it has two hemispheres. Your cerebellum is in control of your balance and your coordination. It is constantly adjusting the way your body moves. As you practice any physical activity, such as dancing, your cerebellum receives messages about your body's actions and positions, especially from your muscles. It sends commands back to your muscles, adjusting your movements. As your cerebellum gradually becomes more accurate in its corrections, you begin to notice improvements in your dancing or whatever activity you're trying to perfect. For example, if you have learned to ride a bike, chances are you didn't master it all at once. It took some practice. That was your cerebellum in charge of your balance and coordination, making small adjustments with each improvement until you could pedal quickly and furiously on your own without even thinking about it. How cool is that? All of these activities are feedback back and forth from your cerebellum to the nerves in your spinal cord, out to your muscle nerves, and back to make small adjustments every time you practice. That's why we sort of say that practice makes perfect. When you practice something and your muscles get this feedback from this cerebellum part of your brain, and your cerebellum makes adjustments to your muscle motion, it works both ways, and you can train, your brain is training your muscles and your muscles is training your brain. It's really cool. Let's try an experiment to demonstrate what the cerebellum does. Stand up, close your eyes, make sure you're in a safe place. Reach your arms out to your side so that your body makes the shape of a T. Slowly, slowly, bring your arms forward, touching your fingertips together. You may now open your eyes. Was that easy for you? Your cerebellum coordinated your movements for you. If you have damaged your cerebellum, you would not be able to do this simple exercise. No matter how hard you tried, your hands would jerk around without any control. That's why we want to be super careful when you're doing these physical activities that you are wearing a helmet. I sure wish this little boy was wearing a helmet. But this is why this catcher has the helmet on, so that this baseball doesn't crash into the bones in the skull and create damage to the brain. Now, let's put all the parts of your brain together. Look at this picture of the brain. See if you can identify the three parts. There's a brain stem, the cerebrum, and the cerebellum. I'm going to ask you 3 riddles to test your knowledge and see how well your brain is working. Are you ready? I am the largest part of the brain. I'm divided into 2 hemispheres. I am sometimes called the thinking brain. What am I? The cerebrum. I am only 3 inches long. But without me, the spinal cord would not be connected to the brain. One of my parts is called the medulla or medulla. What am I? The brain stem. I look a lot like the cerebrum with 2 hemispheres of my own, but I'm much smaller. Without me, you would not be able to balance on one leg. What am I? The cerebellum. That's right. Great job, everybody. Your brain is not very big, and yet it is more powerful than the strongest computer that has ever been created. All other systems of the body are dependent on this complex 3-pound organ that lives inside your skull. Your brain is the center of your memory, your thoughts, and your feelings. Your brain is in command of your whole body. We call it the command center. When your brain stops working, the rest of your body will stop working as well. Well, I think I remembered everything that I wanted. This is Ricardo, our narrator, talking. Everything that I wanted to tell you today. Next time we'll look inside your skulls to see what else is tucked away within those bones, in addition to your brain. This is a big hint. All right, let's talk a little bit about our brain and have some questions and answers. You'll be answering some of these questions later on. On Canvas, you'll be able to find those questions that you'll need to type up some good answers for. So here's one. Is your skull one big bone? No, it is formed by 8 interlocking bones wedged together like a puzzle. So that is an immovable joint. What vital organ does the skull encase? The brain. Is the brain the only thing within the skull? No, the brain floats in clear liquid that cushions the brain and keeps it from banging against the skull. And inside your skull, we are going to be learning there are additional organs inside your skull. All right. What are the 3 sections of the brain? The brain stem, we call that medulla. The cerebrum, the thinking brain, and the cerebellum. Remember, bella means small. Cerebellum is the part of your brain responsible for coordination and balance. How do nerves and the brain interact? Well, the nerves are messengers and send information from different parts of the body through the spinal cord into the brain. What's the medulla, or the lower part of the brain stem, responsible for controlling? What does this control? Most of your involuntary or automatic movements are controlled in your brain stem. We don't have to think about it. There's no reason for these messages to come from your body and go any farther into your brain because you're not going to think about them. We want them to happen automatically in your brain stem. Shorter distance to just have the brain stem or the medulla take care of those unconscious, involuntary automatic movements. Is the medulla responsible for reflexes? Not really. Most reflexes happen even farther down and do not involve the brain at all. Things like breathing and sneezing and heartbeat happen in the medulla, but things like reflex to try to prevent you from getting cut on something terribly or being burned on something happen in your spinal cord so that you can remove your hand away from those dangerous activities even quicker. Examples of things that medulla controls are breathing, heartbeat, sneezing. What is the cerebrum responsible for controlling and managing? Here we talked about it. All of these things. This is the cerebrum. Language, reasoning, science, math, reading, art, creativity, imagination, music, shapes, controlling your muscles that you think about, okay, that you are thinking about. There's a crossover control. What is the part of the cerebrum that does the most thinking? The cerebral cortex. What happens to the cerebral cortex the more that it is used? It becomes thicker over time. You get a fat brain. You get smarter and smarter. I can compliment you on your nice fat brain. Is the cerebrum the smallest or the largest part of your brain? It's the largest. You heard in today's read aloud that the cerebrum is divided into two hemispheres, and the hemispheres sort of control different things. Each hemisphere controls the muscles on the opposite side of the body. If you use one side of your body more, for instance, if you are right-handed or left-handed, the hemisphere on the opposite side is usually more developed. What is the cerebellum responsible for controlling? Balance and coordination. Here's the cerebellum, and that's the slide where we talked about balance and coordination. What would happen if you were to damage your cerebellum? You would not be able to control movements in your body. Are other systems dependent or independent of the brain? Dependent. Why? Because the brain and the nervous system are the command center of the whole body. If the brain stops working, the human body stops working. Since that is true, why should this little boy be wearing a helmet? And why are we glad that this catcher has a helmet? You're right. What hemisphere of your cerebrum is most developed? Do you know? When you play soccer, what foot do you like to plant on the ground and which foot do you kick with? The one that you kick with is called your dominant foot. Which hand do you use to pick up your pencil and write with? Is it the same as the foot that you kick with? Most people use one side of their body more. They use either their right foot and their right hand or their left foot and their left hand. And that would be called your dominant side of the body. But some people have mixed dominance. You can use either foot, you can use either hand, or you might kick with your left foot but write with your right hand, kick with your right foot and write with your left hand, and that would be called mixed dominant. Most people have one side. If you write with your right hand and kick with your right foot, like I do, your left side of your brain is more dominant. If you kick with your left foot and write with your left hand, the right side of your brain is more dominant. Remember, we talked about that crossover. So interesting. So let me ask you again, which hemisphere of your cerebrum is more developed. It would be the opposite side from which you write and kick. Very interesting. There's so much more to learn about the brain. Maybe you will grow up and be a neurologist. When you do, I want you to call me and I want you to tell me about some of the research that you're doing. I might be in a nursing home by then, but you call me up and you say, Miss Hargrove, here's what I'm learning. And I will be so happy to know about what it is you are learning about your brain. Thank you. Talk to you later.